everyone, it's Shel C from PaperOcotilloStudio. Today I'm sharing with you a technique with the gel plate and then what I did with it in my junk journal. This was from the Art Joy of Sharing live stream show this morning. So if you'd like to watch it in real time, you can by going to the Art Joy of Sharing YouTube channel. And then you can watch it as I was doing it. But basically, what I was doing was experimenting using acrylic paint pens, in this case, Posca pens, but there are other brands of acrylic paint pens that would work for this as well. I know there's some that Arteza makes because I have some of those. They're fatter though; they're fat tips. And there's other brands out there. I mean, Posca is not the only one. I just think that they're really great, and I like having a fine tip for this. So I wanted to do some writing on the gel plate and then pick it up and make a gel print of writing. And I was thinking about our theme this month. This is the last day that I'm doing anything with it, but all month long in Art Joy of Sharing, our art community on Facebook, our theme has been creative lettering. And I've tried all throughout the month to think of ways to use letters and writing in my art as part of the design, whether it's just letters or whether it's I did everything. I stamped, I stenciled, everything all through the month. So you've seen a lot of writing and lettering in my mostly just junk journal or art journal pages this month. I've been doing a lot of junk journaling, and that's about all I've been doing in real life journals made out of real life junk. Like this one that you see to the right of the screen, that's a tab bound journal made out of packaging of what you get stencils from Stencil Girl in the mail, which is kind of a cardboard envelopes. So anyway, the way that I did this, I had to think about it because if I just write on the plate, I know that I should be able to use acrylic ink, which is what is in these pens, on the plate as part of my design. But if I just write, it's going to be backwards when I pick it up. So what I did was I took the quote, a couple different quotes that I wanted to try making gel prints out of, and I printed them out by using a free program. It's just paint.net is a free program that you can edit photos and make graphic type stuff. It's a limited program, but you can absolutely do this. I just use the text tool to type up my quote. Then I use the view tool, which there's an option to flip horizontally. I flipped my letters horizontally so that now they're backwards. And then I just tucked the backwards print underneath my gel plate, and I used my pen to trace it over. That's all I did. On the first one, it was real kind of blocky print. On the second one, it was more of a handwriting print, like kind of connecting some of the letters or whatever. But once they're dry on the plate, things you need to think about, make sure that it's completely dry on the plate. Also, your pickup layer needs to be thin. When you're writing with the acrylic paint pen, you need to make sure that it's flowing well. So you need to shake it and write it onto some scratch paper to make sure that it's flowing well so that it comes out easily. And then something that I did not do, because this was a live stream, was I didn't wait for it to dry a long time. I don't ever wait for anything to dry a long time. Here in Arizona, it's very dry. So things here, for me, acrylic paint dries quickly. But when you put the pickup layer, like I just did, this is now a ghost print on this one. There was a second one for this one. And actually the other one probably did too, but I didn't do it. I'm using a Baron to make sure that I press down and smooth out all the wrinkles and get a good contact by using the Baron. If you don't know what a Baron is, it's a printmaking tool, and you can find one on my Amazon store just like this. This is a plastic one. There's also more expensive ones that are made out of metal. But this plastic one is made by Speedball. It's called the Red Baron, which I think is funny. So I also was experimenting with tracing around stencils And for letters, you need to make sure the stencil's the opposite direction so that the letters will come out correctly. And also adding a little bit of design by putting a layer of stenciling after I've made my letters, then putting a layer of stenciling and then letting that dry pretty well, and then putting a pickup layer. The only thing you need to think about is your pickup layer needs to be thin, so thin that you can see through it, so you can see the stuff through it, and that will help you pick everything up. Now this one I definitely did not wait long enough. I should have just set it aside and let it, you know, stew in its own juices there for a bit. Not overnight or anything extreme like that, but you know, maybe 5 minutes. But I didn't. I just went straight for it because I was on a live stream and I didn't really have time to wait for things, you know. So while I was waiting for that one, I decided to, I had just turned over my stencil that was wet onto the other plate, and I decided to just play around with that a little bit with the pens by using some colors of orange and pink and just drawing around that design that was already there to make it, you know, sometimes you have a stencil and you use it, but it's always going to be the same. The stencil's always going to be the same, no matter what, right? So if you add a little bit of your own hand to it, even if it's when you're gel printing with some acrylic paint pen, you can do something fun. So it was just kind of like a little ghostiness on there with that unbleached titanium that had been on the stencil, and I pressed it down with the brayer a little bit. So I just wanted to make a little bit of something different while I was waiting. So this one, the bottom part came out a little left on the plate a little bit. So I could have done another print, but I just touched it up with the pen, as you can see here. So you can see even that ghost print that I did of the first quote came out. You could still read it. And I probably could have gotten something off this plate as well as a ghost print, but I didn't do it. I just cleaned it. So now I'm just messing around with the paint pens on there, writing a few things. And then I did a pickup of that with some dark paint. Again, I didn't let it dry. At that time, I didn't let anything dry. It was still kind of a little bit wet in some places with the first layer. So then when I did my second layer, you know, cleaning off the brayer, I ended up actually having some mist spots on this one, which actually turned out to be good because since the first layer of pen wasn't dry, the second layer didn't have anything to pick up because it just rolled into the paint. So then what was dry kind of got left. What wasn't kind of made white. So you didn't end up getting a lot of color, which was I thought was interesting. So then my second print, I picked up the rest of it, and I got 2 prints out of that. So that was kind of fun. And it doesn't look exactly like the stencil. It still kind of looks like the stencil, but not exactly. So those 2 were kind of fun. So then I grabbed a Birds in Bloom magazine. I've been making syrup for the hummingbirds and feeding the hummingbirds, and we have quite a few hummingbirds coming to the house. And this Birds in Bloom that I had was all about, well, there was an article about hummingbirds, so I decided to make a cute little hummingbird. And here was something else I thought I could do with acrylic paint pens on the gel plate. So I put the photo underneath the gel plate, and then I took my fine tip black and I did an illustration tracing around and over the photo. You could do this with the face. You could do this with the landscape. You know, it would be kind of fun. It would be something fun to do. Now, when you're thinking about gel printing in layers on a plate, more than one layer of paint on a plate, remember that the first thing you put down is going to be the thing that shows first. So by adding the illustration pin on there first in black, which is the tracing part, and then you'll see me come back in and add some more illustration lines. Then that layer of pen is going to be on the top of whatever else I put on there, which makes it kind of forgiving actually, because you don't have to end up going back in with illustration lines over your acrylic painting after you've painted it in, because it's already there on the plate. So of course, I did not wait long enough, of course. So it didn't come out as pristine as it could have. I still like the way it came out, but it definitely was not as perfect as it should have been had I waited and let everything on the plate dry first before I tried to lift it with the thin layer of paint at the end. So the next thing I did once I had added in all my illustration lines with the black pen, then I came back in with the soft brush and some different paint colors, and I'm basically just coloring it in with paint. I'm not being too fussy. I'm not worried about, making sure that I stay within the lines. I mean, somewhat, but not terribly much. Just a quick painting with a little bit of green and turquoise at the top. And then the feathers, the tail feathers are actually orange on this bird. It has like well, you could see, you saw the picture. I'm just copying the picture basically with my colors. Some yellow, some light yellow, some orange and reds, and then a little brown branch. So I'm just painting over the top with a soft brush. That's all I'm doing with some acrylic paint. But I did set this aside to dry, but I did not wait long enough. That's the problem with doing it during a live stream. You're rushing everything to get, to get the result. And of course, I really can't. I could have got a blow dryer, like a regular heat blow dryer, and blow dried this a little bit. But heat tool, you don't really want to use your heat tool too much on your gel plate because it is sensitive to heat at some temperature. I mean, a very high temperature. So maybe I could have, but you know what I'm saying. I rushed. I rushed through it, and my results show it. I also got some really dark brown to put on there in some of the sections and some bright orange for the tail feathers, a little bit of yellow around the eye. And then I set this aside to dry. And I started working on my background in this tab-bound junk journal. So I'm using this quote, the first one I printed. It was inspired by I knew I was going to do this page, so it was inspired by the colors. If you want to know what your painting is going to look like, you can just turn the gel plate over and look at it. I was wondering it. I knew that the image would be reversed, so the beak would be going in the opposite direction. I just wanted to make sure that I put my quote in the right way on the right side so that my bird could be on the other side on this page. So that's why I was turning it over to look. But it's fun to look on the back side and see what you got once you're done painting it. So then I glued that down. The words, I glued them down with a glue stick, and the colors in the background on the page were already the greens and blues, and that's what I wanted to stick with. That was what inspired the colors on the page. And of course the bird has that turquoisey shiny head in similar to this peacock color I'm painting with. I used the paints that were left on my palette to finger paint in some areas and kind of fill in and integrate the things that I glued down as collage. So I still had some paint left. Couldn't use the red and orange, but I used all the yellow, the light yellow, the green, and the turquoise to integrate a little bit. So then now I'm going to try to lift this. I know it's not dry. You saw me touch it. I know it's not dry completely. But I decided to use some transparent white or mixing white acrylic paint, a thin layer of that, to pick this up. And I didn't wait long enough. I burnished it. I didn't let it dry, but it still picked up most of it. So you'll see the moment of truth. You'll see what comes up. Trying to get it good and stuck. But if you do this at home, go ahead and let it dry longer. The yellow paint wanted to stick to the plate, so a lot of the yellow paint peeled off because that was the last thing I put on. It wasn't as dry as the rest of it, as you can see. But I still got a pretty cool image. So I tore that guy up and I'm sticking it down with some gel medium because it's such a large piece and it's still not quite dry. When I touch it, it feels cool. I want to make sure that I get everything sealed in. So I went ahead and used gel medium to put this down and to get it really good and stuck and sealed in. And then, of course, I dried it with a heat tool once I had everything stuck down, which I cut out. And this video was too long. So then once it was dry, make sure you got it good and dry. I went back in with my Posca pen and just like touched up. I wanted the eye to show. I wanted to extend the branch out across the page and just touch up a few areas where the black had peeled off because I didn't wait long enough. And then I got a few colors colored in the branch so that it matched, so that it, because the plate ended, the branch needed to be extended. Otherwise, it would just be floating in space, which would be weird, I thought. And then with the leftover paint again on the on the palette, I finger painted some more and blended in around the bird with the light yellow. And I like to finger paint. It might not be the smoothest application of paint on there, but I find it fun, so I do it. So then there had been some paper glued on there that had green and blue turquoise chevrons on it, which I thought I would continue that pattern. So I grabbed this DecoArt stencil that has the same type of a pattern, and some turquoise and green and light green paint and a little sponge, and I'm adding back in some of that chevron pattern around the background. Just that's already what was on the page, and I liked it. The reason that you put during this method of making this tab bound journal, which I learned from Dina Wakely, she has you put some napkin and tissue on there just randomly with your gesso as you're gessoing, so that you have something on the page and you don't have a blank page. So I like to use what I put on there as inspiration towards what I'm going to have on the page when it's finished. So that's the reason that I wanted to add back in the chevron pattern. And I think that looks pretty good. Is it perfect? No. It's not meant to be. A gel print is a monoprint. A monoprint is something that's printed and will only ever be what it is one time. You can't repeat it. And it's usually a little bit imperfect and a little bit grungy, and that's the way you want it, right? That's the way gel prints are supposed to be, so I'm not going to fuss too much about it. I add a little bit of white highlight with a pen because I like to do that. And a little bit more color where some areas on the bird I thought I lost most of that orange color. I'm not sure if it was because of the kind of paint it was, but it did not pick up the orange feathers very much, so I ended up adding some of that back in. But anyway, this was a fun project using acrylic paint pens on your gel plate to draw or make words or whatever. Of course, we're still doing hashtag AJOS creative lettering theme this month, so that's a creative way to put some lettering on your page. Different way of doing it. I added a few cutout leaves. And the last thing I ended up doing, and you'll see me do it pretty soon here, is I have this brush pen that has iridescent sparkle in a clear medium, and it's made by Spectrum Noir, I think, the company. And I put that all over the bird because when you see a hummingbird in the sunlight, it has that iridescent shimmer all over it, especially usually on its head and back. So I wanted to include that. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment or question below. Subscribe if you haven't already, turn on notification bells, and join my channel membership for $1.99 a month. You get exclusive content. That's it for me. Thanks. Bye-bye.